So, you want to learn redstone, but have no idea where to start. Well, you've come to the right place because in this video, I am explaining every single redstone component listed in the creative menu under the redstone tab, and what they do, how they work, and how you can use them. This is the start of a new series where I explain the absolute basics of redstone, because most of redstone is really just the basics slapped together. If you look at massive contraptions that most people build in survival worlds, they're usually just a bunch of small basic circuits linked up into one. So yeah, this new series will go through each and every one, explain how they work. But first, we need to explain the basics of redstone. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, just before we start, I do redstone in Java. However, most of everything I explained today should work in both Java and Bedrock. There are a few things that are Java only and a few more things that are Bedrock only. But I will explicitly state beforehand which ones are version specific, and everything else will be cross-compatible between the versions. Okay, let's start with the basics of what redstone runs on. So, in Minecraft, everything is processed under game ticks, and one game tick happens every single 0.05 seconds, or 20 times a second. Now, redstone ticks are slightly different. So one redstone tick is 2 game ticks, or 0.1 seconds, or 10 times a second. So everything in redstone runs on redstone ticks, which happens 10 times a second. So there are 10 redstone ticks in 1 second. Moving on to our first redstone component, that is the redstone dust. Now, most people will probably already know what redstone dust does. It transmits signals. Now, redstone dust has 2 modes. It has the classic cross and also the dot. Now, I have a texture pack to show the power level of the redstone, so just ignore that 0. It sort of it tells me that this redstone dust currently has a signal strength of 0. I'll leave a link in the description to Vanilla Tweaks, which is the website I got this texture pack from. But for 99% of the times you use redstone dust, you will not be using the dot. The only difference is that the dot means the only block that it's powering is the block it is on top of, and the cross means it is powering all blocks it is connected to. So most of the time you won't really be using the dot. I've really only used the dot once, I think, ever. In my redstone build, so what you want to be focusing is on the cross. Now, this redstone dust will link to redstone around it, and it will split its little it will redirect in only the directions it needs to. So as you can see, there's redstone dust above and to the side of it, so it splits into above and beside. That means it will not power anything here or anything here, because it is not actually connected to those blocks. Redstone can have a maximum signal of 15. So 15 is the maximum, and that goes down 1 every block until you reach 0, which is unpowered. Everything else is powered. So as I stated before, redstone will only power the block it is on top of, and the blocks that it is directly leading into, as you can see from these little direction things either side of it. Next up, we have the redstone torch. This is one of the ways you can power redstone. As you see, it gives off a power level of 15 consistently. This torch can be placed not only on the top of blocks, but also on the side. When it is on top of a block, it will power in all directions around it, as well as the block on top of it. So this block is now powered, as you can see, because this redstone dust is powered. So it will power all sides as well as above. However, it will not power the block it is on top of. So as you can see, this block that it is on top of is not being powered. When the torch is placed on the side of a block, I'm going to move it up so you can see it better. It will again power all blocks around it, like so. It will also power the block directly above it, like that, and the block directly below it, like that. However, again, it does not power the block it is on. Now, the interesting thing about the redstone torch is that when the block it is on is powered, so if this wool block that I placed the torch on, if I give it a power, it will depower the redstone torch, or unpower the redstone torch. Now, this torch will not output any power at all. It basically inverts the signal. So when the block is powered, it isn't. When the block isn't powered, it is. Anyway, moving on to the redstone block now, we have the most consistent power source in the game, basically. It always powers, no matter what. It always powers redstone components directly around it. But that is the key word, redstone components. Now unlike the torch, which can actually power blocks, as you can see, if you point it into a block, it can power the block, powering the dust on top of the block. This redstone block will not power blocks. It will only power things directly next to it. That's called soft powering, but I'll explain more about that later. So yeah, the redstone block provides a consistent power level of 15 no matter what at all times. It can also be pushed by pistons, which I'll explain later. Now moving on to repeaters. So, as I said before, redstone dust can lead up to 15 blocks away. So here you see it's 0, and it will no longer go any further. But what if you wanted to go further? Well, that's when the repeater comes in. When you place a repeater, it will take the input from behind. It will take the input and just relay it over. It will basically reset it to 15 and go all over again. That is the primary function of repeaters. It will repeat a redstone signal. However, there is a second function to it, which is delay. By default, a repeater has a 1-tick delay. So if I do this and then power it, as you can see, that was a slight delay before that side got powered. It wasn't an instant update. But you can actually use this by extending the delay on a repeater. You can right click the repeater and this back torch will move slightly backwards. Every time you right click, it will extend by another redstone tick. And so you can go up to 4 redstone tick delay, and that is very obvious because look at that. That's a 4 redstone tick delay. You can use this to create longer delays if you want something to delay a little bit. So if you unpower and then power, you can see it has to move all the way along the repeaters before making it to the end. Now the final use case of repeaters that not many people know about is that you can lock them. And this will barely come in useful in your normal redstone contraptions, but could come in useful when you do something specific like logical redstone or computational redstone or something. I don't do that, but I know people like that do use it. People who do use this feature. But basically, if you power a repeater from the side with another repeater, it will lock this repeater. You can still change it, but you can still change the delay on it, but the signal it is outputting will be locked. So if I unpower this side, this will stay powered. However, if you lock it while it is unpowered, let's lock it there. It is now locked in the unpowered state, meaning it cannot be powered again. So basically, it just holds the current state that it is in, powered or unpowered. Kind of cool, but, you know, not very useful in most situations. Next up, the comparator. Now, this is a big one. So it does it's sort of similar to the repeater, but it will take an input from the back, as so. You can see it is powered by these 2 back torches there, and it will output the same signal out the front. So if you as you can see, I was inputting a signal of 15, and it's going to output a signal of 15. But if I go back a bit, and let's say we input a signal of 12, it will output a signal of 12. So if it was a repeater here, it would reset the 12 back to a 15, but a comparator will take the 12 and continue the 12. That is the most basic use of the comparator. However, it also has 2 modes. The default mode is compare mode, and if you give it a right click, that front torch will turn on, signaling that it is in subtract mode. Now, compare mode is less useful, but I'm going to explain it anyway. It basically compares the signal it gets from the side. It basically takes the signal from the back and compares it to the bigger of the 2 signals on the sides. And if the back signal is bigger, it will continue doing it normally. But if the side signals are bigger, it will not output anything. So as you can see, if we have a signal strength of 13 going in the back of the repeater, but a signal strength of 14 going in the side, it would not output anything. However, if we move this to become a 12, because 12 is smaller than 13, it will just continue doing whatever it is that it would do before. 13 outputs 13. You can have 2 signals going in from the side. but it will take whichever one is bigger. So if, let's say 15 and 12, it ignores the 12 and compares the 15 to the 13. And because 15 is larger than 13, it will not output anything. Now, moving on to the second mode that a comparator has, subtract mode. It basically takes the larger of the two signals on the side, and subtracts it from the back. So let's say we have a signal strength of 12 again, and we also have a signal strength of 11. Because 12 is larger than 11, it will ignore the 11 and take the 12 and subtract it from 13. And because 13 minus 12 is 1, it will output a 1. However, you cannot go below 0. So if we have 12 minus, or if we have, let's say, 12 minus 13, ignoring this one, so this is 12 minus 13, it will stay at 0. It will not go to -1. There are no negative numbers when it comes to redstone. The final use case of the comparator is that it can read containers. So not only can it read the signal strength of redstone, but it can also read how full a container is. Only from the back though, it cannot read it from the side. It will only read it from the back. So, as you can see, this barrel is currently empty, meaning it is giving out a signal strength of 0. But if I go ahead and put one item in it, it will output a signal strength of 1. Now, this is not how many items are in the barrel, but how full the barrel is. So, if the barrel is completely full with redstone dust, it will output a signal strength of 15, and it will proportionately adjust depending on how full the barrel is. So there are not 11 stacks of items in here or anything. It is 11 out of 15 full, basically. Now this is proportional to any storage container, so a smaller storage container like a hopper, only having 5 slots, will still be full at 15, and then 12, and so on. So it is proportionate to the size of the container. However, it can also read a container through a block. So even though there's a block between them, it will still read it, which means you can hide the redstone behind a wall. This has to be a solid block though, and what is a solid block I will explain in a second. Finally, we have a target block. Now, a target block is a solid block, which I'll explain in a second, but the main use of a target block is not actually the intended purpose. So the intended purpose is to, be a target. So if I shoot it, it will actually output a redstone signal. As you saw, it glowed, but that's because of my texture pack, that's because of my shader pack, basically. So if I shoot this target block, it will output a signal based on how close to the bullseye I got with my shot. So let's say I completely miss, it is a 1. That is as far away from the bullseye as you can get. However, if I try and get a bullseye here, that was so close, 14. If I see if I can get a bullseye here, 15, there you go. So that shot was a 15. It will, that shot was a bullseye, it will output a signal strength of 15. That is the most basic and intended use for the target block. But why a target block is so useful in redstone is because it redirects a redstone line. So let's say we have a redstone line here, and usually it will not power any blocks. Let's just say here. If we have a lamp here, the redstone will not power this block, meaning it will not power the redstone lamp above it. So if I go ahead and give it a power, it will not power it. However, if I switch this bottom block to a target block, as you can see, because the target block is counted as a redstone component, it actually redirects the redstone line to point into it, meaning this target block is now powered. And that means this lamp above it will now be powered and turn on. Now, moving on, we have what blocks you can place redstone on top of. Now, we have two types of blocks. We have solid blocks and we have transparent blocks. So solid blocks include most blocks in the game: wool, stone, let's see, terracotta, concrete powder. We have wood or whatever block. Most blocks in the game are solid blocks, including this amethyst. I'm not sure why amethyst was in the redstone tab, but it is. It's there, so I decided to include it. I guess it is a full block, so there you go. But a full block the difference between full blocks and transparent blocks is that full blocks transmit redstone signals. So if I go ahead and put a redstone signal directly into this full block, you can see the redstone lamp. It will power the redstone lamp. However, if I do the same thing to a transparent block, it does not transmit the redstone signal, so it does not power the block above it. Now, there are different ways to power a full block, but I will explain that later in the next bit. But for now, we'll focus on transparent blocks because this is the one that is a bit different to what you would expect. So transparent blocks means you can still place redstone on top of it. Slabs are included in this, only if they are placed on the top half of the block though. If you place it on the bottom half, you cannot place a redstone dust on it. I'm right clicking, but it is just not working. So you can still place redstone on top of it. The redstone on top of glass and other transparent blocks will still power, but it will not actually transmit the redstone's the redstone power. So the redstone power will not go through the glass, which means blocks like this won't be powered. While if this was a full block or a solid block, it will power the lamp because the block transmits the redstone signal. Now, the other interesting thing about transparent blocks is that a signal will go up a transparent block, but it will not go down a transparent block. This is an interesting thing. I don't know exactly why this happens, but it does happen, so, you know. But the other thing about redstone, about transparent blocks, is that redstone can pass through it, which means, you know, if you place a block here, it will not cut off this redstone line, while a solid block will cut off the redstone line because you can't move through the solid block. Which means you can actually make this pretty interesting redstone ladder, which transmits signals upwards. And if you do any redstone at all, you'll know that moving signals upwards is one of the hardest things in the game. It's weirdly difficult to move a signal upwards, but as you know, because the redstone signal can't travel down glass, it will only work from bottom to top, but will not work if you're trying to move a signal from top to bottom. As you can see, it will not move down the block. Anyway, moving on, we have different ways to power a block. So when a solid block is powered, it's not just powered the same way no matter what. Now, by that I mean there are two ways of powering a solid block. There is hard powering, as signified by the red here, but there is also soft powering, as signified by the blue. Now, they are almost identical, but we'll start with hard powering. So hard powering happens when you bleed a comparator repeater directly into the block. So this is a repeater, but I can replace this with a comparator. It does the same thing, except for obviously the signal strength that it passes through into the block, but it basically does the same thing. It hard powers this red terracotta right here. Now, if I flick this on, you can see that hard powering a block means you can take a signal out of the repeater. Using a repeater out of the block, you can take a signal using a dust out of the block, and it will also power any redstone components that are directly next to the block. However, when you soft power a block, which happens when the redstone dust leads directly into the block, you cannot take an output using redstone dust. This redstone dust will not be powered, while over here it is. Everything else works the exact same. You can still take a signal out with a redstone repeater. You can still take any redstone components around it will still power. The only difference is that like any other redstone dust connected to the block will not power. Okay, moving on, we have the input devices. So this is all ways you can input a redstone signal as the player. So first up, we have the most basic or most common ways of powering, and that is the lever and the buttons. Now, the lever is probably one of the most basic. You can flick it on, providing a signal strength of 15, and you can flick it off, turning it off. And it will power all blocks around it, as well as the block it is directly placed on top of. So this block is being powered, and because Moss is a solid block, it will power the redstone dust here. Now, buttons. These buttons are slightly different. By pressing them, you will give a temporary signal rather than the permanent signal from the lever. So pressing them will give a temporary signal, turning off after a certain amount of time. And the difference between stone buttons and wooden buttons is that wooden buttons stay powered for 1.5 seconds or 15 redstone ticks, and stone buttons stay powered for 1 second or 10 redstone ticks. That is literally the only difference between them. They will both power the block they are on. So if you place the redstone like that, they will both power it. Now stone buttons, they work the same as black stone buttons. So a black stone button will do the exact same thing as a stone button, it just looks slightly different. And wooden buttons, any type of wooden button, doesn't matter the wood type, will do the same thing as the wooden button there. Moving on to pressure plates. Now these are the more interesting ones. So while wooden and stone pressure plates do the exact same thing, they don't power for different times like the buttons do. They do the exact same thing, except, so the wooden pressure plate will detect an item on it. However, the stone pressure plate will not detect an item on it. It will only detect mobs, like players or pigs or cows or something. Now the other type of pressure plate is weighted pressure plates. Now we have a light weighted pressure plate and a heavy weighted pressure plate. Most people just call it gold and iron. But a light weighted pressure plate adds 1 signal strength for every single item or entity that is on top of it. So if I throw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different items on top of it, it will output a signal strength of 5. Now this does not work with stacks, so if you put a stack of trapdoors on it, for example, it will still only do 1, because technically that whole stack of items is counted as one entity. If I hit F3 plus B, showing hitboxes, this is only really a Java feature, the hitboxes, not the pressure plate. You can see that it is only one, it is clumped together as one item, so it will only count as one entity. However, the heavy weighted pressure plate does the same thing, but it will output 1 extra signal strength for every 10 entities on top of it. Now this is kind of hard to demonstrate, but I'm going to try anyway. If I throw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 different items on top of it, it will output a signal strength of 1. Anywhere between 1 and 10 will be a 1. But as soon as I put another 1 on it, it will now go to 2. And I think that clumped together with another item because I actually threw a jungle thing. Let's throw a birch slab maybe. There we go. There we go. Okay. Output signal strength of 2 because there are now 11 items on that, or 11 entities on that pressure plate. So yeah, it counts up once every 10 entities rather than once every 1 entity like the gold pressure plate. Now, moving on, we have skulk sensors. Now, I have these waterlogged to stop them from making sound. That is one of the features. If I take the water out, they'll start making screechy and weird vibrating noises. But I'm not gonna show that here right now. But yeah, these are skulk sensors and the skulk shrieker. Now, not 100% sure why the skulk shrieker is part of this, but I'm going to explain it anyway because it is in the redstone menu here, skulk shrieker. But a skulk sensor, it will detect sound, and just outputting, every time it detects a sound, it will output a redstone signal based on how far that sound is. It has a range of 8, so if you are exactly 8 blocks away, it will output a signal strength of 1. But if you are directly on top of it, if you stand on it, I think, there we go, it will output a signal strength of 15. Now, the interesting stuff happens when you take a comparator output from it. A comparator will output what type of sound it is hearing, which is super interesting. Now, I'll put a chart on screen to show what the different types of sound and what signal strength it outputs. But walking, for example, outputs a signal strength of 1. And placing a block like moss, for example, will output a signal strength of 13. And breaking a block, I think, will output a signal strength of 12. I think. It has a little bit of a cooldown, so it's hard to look. Yeah, breaking a block outputs a signal strength of 12. So it will vary the signal strength of when a comparator reads it based on the type of sound. Now, if you do want to waterlog it and still have redstone components next to it, as you know, if you put a bucket of water, I'm just going to quickly grab a normal bucket to drain it. But if you put a bucket of water, it will break all the redstone. So that's not ideal. So to put water next to the redstone, you break a block next to it. So the water actually path finds. It finds the easiest way down. So now there being a hole here means that the easiest way down is here, which means it will not float anywhere but there, meaning you can now place redstone around it, which is super interesting and super useful when you want to not make any sound but still have the skulk sensor. Now, the calibrated skulk sensor is sort of same, sort of different. So, as you can see, it also outputs based on the loudness. So everything is the exact same for the most part. It will output a signal based on how far it is, except this time it has a range of 16 blocks. So as you can see, I'm way more than 8 blocks away, and it is still detecting my sounds. Now the interesting stuff comes in when you add this little purple bit here. So if you input a signal from the purple bit, it will only listen to sounds with that signal strength. So if we go ahead and actually we'll use a comparator for this, and we'll use a barrel or a chest in this case. If you put one item in this chest, or one item, it will output a signal strength of 1. As you can see, if I put another comparator here, it is outputting a signal strength of 1. So we are inputting a signal strength of 1 into the purple side. Only one side has that purple amethyst bit, so it is inputting it into the purple side. Now that means this skulk sensor now will only listen to sounds that output a comparator signal of 1. So as you can see, if I walk, which outputs a signal of 1, it will output as usual. But if I break or place blocks, it no longer does it. Now that's going to be the calibrated skulk sensor over there, so ignore that. But it will now ignore me placing blocks or any other sounds like eating. Or let's go carrot. If we eat carrots, it will not listen. It will not hear that sound. When if we don't have it, it will. It will hear me eating. It will hear me placing blocks. So basically, it limits the sounds that it listens to. Yeah, that's really the only difference between the skulk sensor and the calibrated skulk sensor. So the shrieker, however, it only activates when you stand on top of it, and it activates this horrible shrieky sound. However, if you have a skulk sensor or calibrated skulk sensor near it, when the skulk sensor detects the sound, it will send the signal to the shrieker, shrieking. And this you would usually summon the warden, but only if it's generated naturally. So only naturally generated shriekers will summon wardens. A shrieker activating, however, can be detected by an observer, which I'll explain in just a little bit. Now, the reason I don't understand why it's part of the redstone category is because it doesn't output any redstone signal. I'm not sure why, even while it's activating, it doesn't output anything. It doesn't output anything through a comparator either. Not sure why it's under the redstone tab. Maybe just because it's in relation with the other skulk stuff, but you know, it is, so I explained it. There you go. Tripwire hook is up next, and this is actually paired with the string, but I'll explain the string by itself in a second. The tripwire hook is kind of useless on its own. It looks kind of cool, so you can use it in builds, but it only activates when there is a string between them. When you put two either side and there is a string between them. This can be as long as you want. It can be infinitely long. As you can see, there you go. The string is now activated. You can't really see the string, but it is there. But the use of this is that it will output a signal to either side of it and the block that it is placed on when an entity moves through it. So when an entity is on the string, it will activate and it will deactivate when it moves out. Now moving on to the observer. The observer is an incredibly useful block. Okay, so an observer will detect any block state change. So let's say we have a lever. We'll just use a lever. It is in front of it. As you can see, it detected that and kind of outputted a thing. We'll add a redstone lamp so it's easier to see. But basically, this front face side, it will detect anything that changes in the block in front of it. So when I click this lever, it will detect that and output a 1 redstone tick signal out to the back. And because a redstone lamp has a little bit of a cooldown, I'll explain that later, it will stay on for a little bit longer than that 1 redstone tick, but you know, the observer is really only outputting a 1 redstone tick signal. So every time the block in front of it changes, it will output a signal. Now, there are many blocks that it can detect. some of which I will explain later, because you know, an observer is really only useful when you put it with other blocks. Now, one of the super interesting ones that it can detect is string, because string changes state whenever an entity moves through it, or enters or exits it. And so, as you can see, if we put an observer behind this string, I put a red terracotta below the string just so you can see it a bit better. But when I walk through this string, it will activate for 1 tick, activating the lamp behind it. So yeah, it can detect when an entity moves in and when it moves out of the string. And because this is so much more compact than having 3 blocks, as well as the blocks that tripwire is on for the tripwire hook and string, it is much better to use just the string and an observer to detect entities rather than using the tripwire hook. So yeah, that's one of the things that the observer can detect, and not really any other use for the string. That's really the only use for it, in Redstone at least. So yeah, there you go. Lectern. A lectern can hold a book, and it can be read by a comparator. So a comparator will output the signal strength proportion based on how many pages there are. So I don't know how well I explained that, but the easiest way to show this is in a book where there are 15 pages. As you can see, this book has 15 pages. It will and because it has 15 pages and there is 15 redstone signal strengths, it will output exactly you know, the signal strength that the page is on. So this page, it's on page 3, it will output a 3. It is on page 10, it will output a 10. That's the most basic use. But if I add more pages, for example, if I take this book, I add a bunch more pages, let's say we add 20 pages, it will then go ahead and take a proportion of the pages rather than directly outputting the signal. So page 7, output 5, because it is 5 out of 15 of the way through the book. If that makes sense, it works the same as anything else the comparator reads. And again, it can read through a solid block, so you can hide it behind the wall. Next up, we have the daylight sensor. Now, the daylight sensor is an interesting one. It is used in very specific use cases, but it detects light level, so how bright it is outside. There are 2 modes, a brightness detector and a darkness detector. The brightness detector obviously outputs based on how bright it is, and the darkness detector inverts that and outputs based on how dark it is. So because it is noon, it is as bright as it can possibly get, meaning it is outputting a signal strength of 15. But if I time set to 0, which is sunrise, it will get a little bit darker, so it will output a lower signal. And once I set it to /time set midnight, and it is in the darkness detector, it detects that it is pretty dark. Not the most dark, because there's still moonlight, so it outputs a decently high signal of 11. That's pretty cool. Really the only use for it. But the one thing you need to note is that it does need sky access. So the block directly above it needs to have you know, access to the sky. It can't just be completely underground. Otherwise, it will just continuously detect a brightness of 0 and a darkness of 15. Next up, we have a note block. Now, obviously, the note block outputs a note. So if we go ahead and add a button to this, we can ding the note, and based on the block it is placed on top of, in this case moss, it will output a different instrument. So if we switch to wool, it goes to a guitar, and if we go to sand, it will switch to drums, or a snare drum specifically. So based on the block it is placed on top of, it outputs a sound. But this is, I'm pretty sure this is the default sound. Yeah, so this is the default sound that it normally makes. Now, it does need the block above it to be empty, which means if I place any block, no matter what it is, above it will no longer output a sound. And also, if we grab a head of a mob, let's in this case say the creeper head, it will play the sound of the creeper. Pretty cool. Very useful for pranks. But that is actually not the most useful thing the note block can do in most redstone contraptions that doesn't include sounds. So the most useful thing I find is that it can be detected by an observer, and right-clicking it will output one observer signal. So that means you can use a full block as if you don't want to use a button, you can use a note block and an observer to have a full block to interact with and output redstone signals for. So that's really cool, very useful in you know, all sorts of different times. It will also update the observer once when it is powered and once when it is unpowered. So it will update it once and it will update again. So yeah, that's, I think, is the most useful thing a note block can do, not the actual sound making, although that does come in handy sometimes. Next up, lightning rod. The lightning rod is a pretty niche input device, basically. It will output a signal of 15 when lightning strikes it. So if I time slash weather set thunder, if I set the weather to thunder, which means there's now a thunderstorm, it'll be kind of hard to see, but I'll try to demonstrate it as best as I can by extending it out a little bit. But when lightning strikes it, which should be soon, because there we go. As you can see, the redstone out. Oh, there it goes again. It outputs a redstone signal. Slash weather clear, just so we don't have thunder continuously striking. But the lightning rod attracts lightning from a 128 block radius. So any lightning that happens within that area will hit the lightning rod rather than wherever it was going to hit. So yeah, and when it does hit, it outputs a redstone signal. Tridents do also work on it, so if you have tried it with channeling and you hit it, it will also, you know, output the redstone signal. Only in thunderstorms though, so very, very niche use cases. Next up, we have the redstone ore, and you're wondering, why is this part of it? You mine it for the redstone dust, right? Well, not exactly, because if you didn't know, if it is currently deactivated. Yes, you heard that right. The redstone ore can be activated, and that is by an entity or a mob, or any type of entity really, walking on top of it. And as you can see, particle effects going crazy around the redstone ore, and this can actually be detected by an observer. So if I walk on top of it, it will detect the redstone ore, you know, continuously. It's kind of sporadic and sort of unreliable, but you can detect someone walking over redstone ore with an observer, and this can be covered up by a carpet, for example. So if I cover it with a carpet, it will keep doing it anyway, so you can't see the ore, but it will still detect a player or even something like an item on top of the ore. Very, very cool. And it also outputs a tiny bit of light when this happens. So yeah, very niche use cases, but it is a use case nonetheless, so you know, use that however you want. Moving on now to pistons, which is a super interesting one, because you know, pistons, they can move blocks in Minecraft. So a normal piston is pretty basic. It can move any block, or most blocks I should say. So if I put a block in front of it and activate it with redstone, it will push the you know, the wool over. Pretty basic. And it has a push limit of 12. So if I go 12 blocks, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12, it can still push it. But as soon as I go over 12, I add another block here, it will no longer be able to push that stack of blocks. And this is also directional, which means you can place it in any direction. It can push blocks up. It can push blocks down. If I place that there, and there, it can push blocks down. Very cool. But yeah, that's the piston. A pretty basic block. Now the sticky piston. The sticky piston is slightly different. It will stick to whatever block is directly in front of it. So you can not only push it, but you can also pull it back as well. Now only in Java edition though, when it is given a 1 redstone tick signal, but if I do this, it will actually spit out the block. In Bedrock, it will not do this because it sort of has a cooldown, so it doesn't spit out. It can't take a 1 tick pulse in Bedrock. But in Java, it will spit out the block. But then if you activate it again, it obviously can pull it back. So that's a pretty cool use case for it. You actually use that a lot more than you would think. But it also has a 12 block push limit, so it can push up to 12 blocks. Now, slime and honey are two very interesting blocks. Now, slime blocks are solid. A slime block, despite being slightly translucent, is a solid block, meaning you can pass a redstone signal through it. So if I go like that, you can pass redstone signals to the other side. Not like that, like that, as you can see. But a honey block, if we do the same thing, it will not, because it is a transparent block. Super weird how this is a solid block, but this isn't. But that's just how it works, so, you know, go with it. However, that's not the reason I have them here. The reason I have them here is because they both stick to each other and other blocks. So if we go ahead and actually use a normal piston, you can see that the slime blocks will stick. So that means it's not only pushing the one directly in front of it, it also sticks to these blocks either on the sides of it as well. And because a sticky piston sticks to this block and this block sticks to all those blocks, you know, you can pull them back. It's super interesting, and also this works with the one tick thing in Java edition as well, not in Bedrock, only in Java. Now honey does basically the same thing. It can stick to itself and other blocks around it. So if I go ahead and make this weird thing, it does the exact same thing as slime. It's just a transparent block. Now the reason both are used and not just one is when you want them right next to each other. So let's say we have this that we want to move up and down, for example, separately. The honey does not stick to the slime, and the slime does not stick to the honey, which is super cool. And you know, that's why they both exist. You can now put long piston extendy things right next to each other. Now these honey and slime do contribute to the push limit, so if you have 12 blocks, you have to be careful when doing this, because if you have 12 blocks, that's 6 blocks, 7, 8, 9, and 10, 11, 12. It will still you know, abide by the push limit. So if I add one more block there, it will no longer push it because the slime is sticking to the wool and cannot be pushed. And then if I get rid of that wool, you can now push it. Now let's talk about immovable blocks. So obsidian is the classic immovable block. You cannot push obsidian or pull obsidian with a piston. Now that also applies to crying obsidian, works the same way as normal obsidian. Because of this, if you have a slime block thingy and it is above the push limit, that is 12 blocks right there, as you can see. And if we add another wool block, it will no longer push it because the wool is sticking to the slime. But if we instead add an obsidian block, because the obsidian doesn't stick to the slime, it will just ignore it and just not pull it. There are a whole bunch of other blocks. All storage containers cannot be, or tile entities, but mostly just storage containers, cannot be pushed by pistons. So any barrels, chests, they cannot be pushed by pistons in Java edition. In Bedrock, you can push barrels and chests, which is super fun. But in Java edition, which I am in right now, it cannot push barrels or chests or droppers or hoppers or anything that stores items, basically. Another thing that pistons cannot push are other pistons when extended. So usually they can. As you can see, that pushes the piston. Yeah, if we have a piston that is extended in front of the piston, it will no longer push it. This applies to both the piston head and the piston's body. So you cannot push the piston body when it's extended. Now, glazed terracotta. Why is glazed terracotta on this list? Well, any color of glazed terracotta works the same, so I'm just going to demonstrate with one. But glazed terracotta can be pushed by pistons, just like that, but cannot be pulled by pistons, and don't stick to slime blocks. So if we have slime blocks there and we push it, it cannot be it doesn't stick to slime blocks, but it can be pushed by pistons. Super interesting block. Can be used in very tight places where you want certain places to push and pull it, but not other places. So always good to know that. Okay, speaking of pistons, next up we have a Java Edition exclusive section. So if you play on Bedrock Edition, you can skip this section with the timestamps in the description and probably along the bottom of the timeline as well. But this is Quasi Connectivity, because Java has this really weird feature, I guess you could call it, where pistons work really weirdly. So when they coded pistons, they copied the code of doors over because it was super easy. So Notch just took the code for a door and put it onto a piston. And the most obvious difference being a door is 2 blocks tall. So obviously, you know, it wouldn't work as intended. But because this was early versions of Minecraft, you know, it was kind of looked over. So a door is 2 blocks tall, meaning it can be powered from any of these blocks all the way around. Not that one. And as well as this one in front of it, the one that the door is placed on, as well as this one here. and these two as well, I guess. So any of these blocks can power the door inside there. However, a piston, in theory, should only be able to be powered by these blocks, as well as the one below it. But because the code was copied over from a door, it can actually now be powered by the same blocks that the door can. So inside we still have that piston, but it can be powered by all the blocks here. And so what we end up with is the possibility of a piston being powered from a block away, because if this was a door, this would be powered. As you can see, it's open. If I break it, it's closed. So yeah, it gets powered from places where it shouldn't. Specifically, that spot, this spot, this spot, this spot, and this spot. That one in the middle doesn't count because that one's supposed to be. But yeah, all these spots marked by the white wool are places where it gets powered by where it shouldn't. The piston shouldn't be powered if this block is a redstone block, yet if we do it, it is. It is powered by the redstone block. However, there are more catches to this, because if we run a line along the top here, that is powering this block, which in theory should power this piston, right? But it doesn't. Why? Because this piston doesn't realize it's being powered. Because, you know, the redstone really only updates this wool block and the other blocks around it. So the piston doesn't get an update, and hence it doesn't realize that it's supposed to be powered. And so if we just go ahead and give it an update, it then realizes, hang on, I'm supposed to be powered, and then powers the piston. So that's basically what Quasi Connectivity is, and because it has been a bug in the game for so long, Mojang just have never decided to remove it, because it's basically now a feature, and people can utilize this. So if we build a 2x2 door just like this, what is going to happen is on both sides, this top piston is going to be powered as it should be, because this block below the redstone dust is powered, which powers this block there. But then, because this piston is being quasi-powered, as soon as this piston extends, that updates this piston and tells it you should extend as well, hence providing that update that you need for the piston to realize. And so what ends up happening is this piston powers, but also this piston. And same on the other side, meaning we get this pretty illegal looking redstone, because, you know, that bottom piston shouldn't technically be powered. But it is because of Quasi Connectivity. And so they can utilize this in redstone builds, because now you can power pistons from 2 blocks above it. Now, if you have a piston down here and you want to power it like that, one way to make sure that the piston gets an update at all times is to use a note block. I like using note blocks. I think you can also use hoppers and droppers, but I like using note blocks because the note block gets powered and then it updates the piston, and when it gets unpowered, it updates the piston again. So what ends up happening is the note block gets updated, making the piston realize it's supposed to be powered, and then again when it unpowers. Very cool. And the note block makes no sound because the wool block is on, or whatever block you decide is on top of it. However, one thing to note is that the transparent blocks not emitting redstone also applies to this. So for example, you have a redstone line running along here. If this was a full block, it would just power the piston, but because it's glass, it doesn't, because, you know, redstone doesn't go through glass. So even if it was a door here, it wouldn't be powered. So yeah, basically, if the door would be powered, you know, it would be powered, but if the door wouldn't be powered, it wouldn't be powered. Okay, moving on to the proper features now. We have all the storage containers, and there are quite a few. So we'll start with the most important storage container when it comes to redstone, I think, the hopper. So the hopper is both a storage container and like a functional block, I guess, because it will pass items through it. It has 5 directions it can face in. It can face so I have a texture pack to show which way it's facing, but to see in vanilla you can just always look at the little spout. Whichever way the spout is pointing, that's the direction it's facing. But the hopper has 5 directions. It can face in all 4 cardinal directions, and it can also face down. So yeah, those are the ways the hopper can face. And whichever way it's facing, it's going to pass items in that direction. So the item I put in here will pass into this one, then pass into this one, then pass into this one, then this one, then this one, and over and over and over again. A hopper passes 2.5 items per second, which is 1 item every 4 redstone ticks. And I mean, other than that, it doesn't really have many other functions. You can drop items on top of it. It will detect if there are any items within the block above it. If there is, it will pick up the item and then move it wherever it's pointing, if it can. If it can't move it there, it will just keep it in its little inventory there. So let's see, if we set up a little demonstration here, I will go ahead and add comparators so you can see which ones are which one has things in it and when. And if I put an item in the end here, you can see the item moves along to hit to the end of the hopper line. You can also pass items down, but one thing to note about items being passed downwards is that it happens a lot faster, because not only is the top hopper, when you put something in the top hopper, not only is that hopper feeding into the bottom one, but the bottom one is also sucking out from the top one, and then it sucks out from here, this one, and then this one sucks out from this one. So what ends up happening is the item actually moves very fast to the bottom. So it would have gone boop, 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 but instead, because each hopper has its own cooldown, it just went all the way to the bottom. That was a weird sound effect I just made. Ignore that. But yeah, that's basically how the hoppers work. So it can not only pass items to where it's pointing, but it can also suck items out of the container above it. The last thing to know about hoppers is that when it is powered by redstone, it is locked. Meaning if I have a hopper line here, and we want to pass an item down, this hopper is locked. Meaning if I put an item here, the item will move from here to here, then from here to here, but it will get stuck here because this hopper can't push the item over because it's locked. As soon as I get rid of this redstone block, the hopper then can push the item forward again, and then it will move forward along the hopper line. Next up is the dropper. Now from now on, actually, except for the crafter, which I'll explain when I get there, but every other storage container, if you put a hopper above it, pointing into it from any direction really, it will filter items into the storage container, which means if I put a bunch of hoppers in there, it will slowly filter into the dispenser, and it fills up the first stack, then the second stack, then the third stack, fourth, fifth, so on, until the storage container is full. Same with chests, it will start at this slot, then to move to this one, this one, this one, and move along left to right, top to bottom is basically how it works. Or top to bottom, left to right. Anyway, the actual dispenser itself and the dropper, they are very similar blocks. Again, I have a resource pack from Vanilla Tweaks that lets me see the direction that they are flowing in with these little arrows along the side. But anyway, many people don't actually know the difference between a dispenser and a dropper. Now, a dispenser is the one over here with a circle mouth, and the dropper is the one with the little triangle, and they are directional, so when they are pointing upwards or downwards, the dropper has a square, and the dispenser has a circle. So basically, dispenser circle, dropper straight line shapes, triangle and, or not square, rectangle. The difference between a dispenser and a dropper is that a dispenser will do basically the same thing a dropper does, but it will use an item if it can use the item. So, for example, a water bucket can be dispensed. If we put a water bucket in each, the dispenser and the dropper, we'll get to the arrows in a second, and we power them both at the same time, the dropper will drop the item out on the floor as an item, and then the dispenser will place the water bucket, leaving the bucket left in the dispenser. And then if we break and then trigger it again, this one obviously is empty, so it doesn't do anything, but this one picks up the item once again, or picks up the water again. I'm gonna replace this because it turned into concrete, but yeah, it picked up the water again. Another good example, as I said, is arrows. So if I put some arrows in there and I put some arrows in there, I power at the same time, the dropper will drop me the item as the arrow as the item, and the dispenser will, as you saw, shot the arrow like you would from a bow. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. I'll show you again. I'll get out of the way so I don't pick up the item this time. So as you see, the dispenser shot the arrow while the dropper dropped the arrow. Now, if it is a block, for example, let's just say a redstone block, we'll put redstone blocks in each. We'll move the arrows out of that one. As the redstone block can't be used by the dispenser, it will just drop it on the floor as an item. So yeah, that is the difference between a dispenser and a dropper. Other than that, they work exactly the same. It chooses, if there's multiple slots filled, it will choose a random one of the slots and shoot from there. Same with the dropper. And yeah, items filter in. They have 9 stacks of inventory. That's about it. Not really anything else to say about that. They drop the item in whatever direction they face it. Next up, we have chests and trap chests. Now, chests, you probably know this already, but this isn't explain everything about the item thing. So I'm going to explain everything. So chests and trap chests can both be placed as double chests by just putting 2 of that type of chest next to each other. Or you can shift click or hold crouch and click on the side of the chest, and that will extend the chest into a double chest. Now by default they have 27 slots, but obviously if you put another one next to it, you can extend that inventory to a lot more. 27 times 2 is 54, so there are 54 slots in a double chest, or large chest as Minecraft calls it. And same with trap chest. A large chest, or it doesn't even say it at the top here, but a large trap chest also stores the same amount of items as a normal chest. The only difference being a chest has a trap chest will output a redstone signal when it is opened. And so if we go ahead and open this chest, you can see that there's a signal. As long as it is opened, the redstone dust turns on. So I'm gonna put a lamp there so you can see it better. As you can see, the lamp turns on as long as the chest is opened. And now with all these storage containers, by the way, you can read them with comparators. However, the chests have a really unique function. Now, if you didn't know, chests cannot be opened when there is a solid block above them. So I cannot open this chest anymore. It is impossible. But the reason I point that out is because if the chest cannot be opened, the comparator actually can't read out of the chest. So this chest has a stack of redstone lamps in it, and so it is outputting a redstone signal of 1. If I block it, it continues to give a redstone signal of 1, but that's because the comparator hasn't been updated and doesn't realize this chest is now blocked. So if we give this comparator an update by placing a block next to it, it realizes that this chest can no longer be opened and hence doesn't give a redstone signal, despite there being a redstone lamp still in it. And when I take the block off, again, we need to update this comparator, and that, you know, gives the power again. Same with the trap chest. It has a stack of comparators, so if we block this off and then update the comparator, it turns off. Unblock it, update the comparator, it turns back on. That is a very unknown feature. I did not actually know this until a couple days ago, when I just figured it out. But that's really interesting. A barrel works the same as a chest, but does not have the function where you can block it and can't open. Now the auto crafter, or the crafter. This is an interesting one. So let's take the auto crafter and bring it back here. So the auto crafter is sort of similar to the dropper or the dispenser. Mainly the dropper, because you can filter items in. It has 9 inventory slots. So let's just say we want to craft a redstone block. So if we put redstone dust in the top there, it will filter items in, but unlike the dropper, it doesn't filter in first slot, top to bottom, left to right. Well, it technically does, but it doesn't fill the first slot, then move on to the next. It puts 1 item in each, and then tries to level out the values. So if I have just a stack in the first one, it will ignore the first one, obviously, and move to the next one. If I put one in the middle, it'll ignore that slot and fill the other ones up first, and try to level out the values of each slot, which is very interesting because it can craft, as the name suggests. So let's go ahead. When it is powered by redstone, it activates and crafts an item. So let's just go ahead and put a bunch of redstone dust in and have that filter through. And once it can craft something, as you can see, it opens, it puts the redstone block or whatever it's crafting in this slot right here, just like a crafting table. Now you can't take that redstone block out. The only way to get it out is to power the crafter, and it'll make a cool sound effect and craft the redstone block using up the respective materials. Now the other interesting thing about the auto crafter is that you can toggle slots. you can toggle which slots are activated. So if you only want the bottom and maybe you want to craft slabs or something, let's just go ahead and grab some wood so we can craft some slabs. If we put wood in, it will only, it will only fill up those slots. And obviously you can also put the items in directly, but most of the time you'll be feeding it in through hoppers automatically. But yeah, that's really cool. You can activate whichever slots you want to do whatever configuration you want. Doesn't really matter. But yeah, that's the basic function of the autocrafter. But you can also read it with a comparator. And a comparator doesn't read it quite the same as other blocks either. Instead of reading how full it is, it reads how many slots have items in it. So if we put 8 items in it, it will output a signal of 8. If we put, let's just say 3 items, it's a signal of 3. And this includes the toggled slots. So we have 3 slots toggled, 3 slots with items in it. That's an output of 6. I am upside down. There, 6. And doesn't matter how many items you have in those slots that are full, it will still remain 6, even if they're full stacks. Moving on, we have the chiseled bookshelf. Now this is a basic one. It's a storage container with 6 slots for books this time. Any type of book. So book and quill, you can get a normal book, enchanted books, they all work. And even signed books. So if I write something in here, sign, and just sign it with some random name, this is a signed book that works as well. Any type of book goes in the chiseled bookshelf, and it is whatever slot you interact with. So if I click on the middle slot there, it will do the middle slot. If I click on that slot, it will do that slot, and that one, and that one. Just like that. You can filter items in with hoppers. It will fill from top to bottom, left to right. So it will go in this order, just like that. And a comparator actually reads it in a weird way. So instead of reading how full it is, it actually reads the last slot that was interacted. So so the last slot that I interacted with was the 3rd slot, so it will output 3. If I interact with that one, that is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th slot, and so it will output 5. That one is the 3rd slot, so it will output 3. And it will output 1, and then the last one is 6, so output 6. Pretty cool. Next up we have the furnace. Now this one's an interesting one. It doesn't really have any redstone capabilities, really. You all know what it does. You put what you want to smelt in the top, fuel in the bottom, and it smelts it after 20 seconds. So, why is this a redstone component? Well, you can actually put items into it automatically. So if you put a hopper in the top, that will put the items in the to smelt slot up here. If you put a hopper either side, any of these hoppers will filter into the bottom fuel slot, and then a bottom hopper will suck the items out once they are smelted. So let's just quickly demonstrate this. Let's say we want to smelt some beef, and our fuel is coal, or coal. If we just get rid of these hoppers just so it's more simple, if we put the fuel in this hopper, as you can see, the coal is going in the bottom slot. If we put the raw beef in the top one, as you can see, it's going in the top slot and it's being smelted. Once it is done smelting, the hopper below will instantly suck it out and give you the result, which you can eat in this case. So that's pretty cool. This mechanic works with all of the furnace types. The furnace, the blast furnace, the smoker, all 3 of those will work with that setup. Now the jukebox, here we go. So the jukebox, it plays music. So if I grab some discs, let's just grab random one, that one. Chirp, that's a pretty good one. There we go, it plays music. You can put a disc in, you can right click again to take it back out. And it also outputs a redstone signal as long as it has a disc inside. Pretty cool. So as long as the disc is in the jukebox, it will output a redstone signal. Now, depending on the disc that you're playing, it will also output a different comparator signal. So in the case of chirp, it's outputting a signal strength of 4. Now, the other thing is, because storage container, of course, you can suck items out and put items in. So, however, there is a catch to this. Because while a disc is playing, the jukebox is providing a power, the hoppers around it will be locked as long as there's a disc playing. And so if I put a disc in, what will happen is that this hopper will be locked, and hence it won't pull the disc out until the disc finishes. And then the jukebox will stop providing a power and allow the hopper to suck it out. So if we put a music disc in the top, you can see it will put it into the jukebox and it will start playing. Pretty cool. And I'm not going to wait the whole thing, but once it finishes playing the song, this hopper will then suck it back out. Pretty cool. Anyway, moving on, we have the decorated pot. So this is another pretty simple one. It holds one type of item up to a stack, so we can go ahead and put a stone pressure plate in. There's no inventory, you just sort of right click on it and you put the item in. It will hold up to a stack of the same item, however much a stack may be. So if it's ender pearls, it'll be a lot less. But you can get it out by either breaking the pot and getting the items, or you can suck it out with a hopper. So if we go over here, grab this hopper, we can both put items in and take items out using hoppers. So if we go ahead and put 14 things in, it will go into here, but then it will instantly get sucked back out by this hopper. The composter works similarly. If you put any natural block in it, it will compost it, and when it's full, it will turn into bone meal, which you can then take out and use as bone meal, just like you would use with normal bone meal. Each natural block obviously providing a different amount of compostiness. Not sure exactly the name. So a moss block is almost guaranteed to give you one level of compostiness, but the other blocks like this azalea leaf are not guaranteed. So as you can see, some of the times I'm clicking, it's not actually going up. It's just putting it in. However, this is a redstone item because, again, you can take things out and put things in using hoppers. So if you take a hopper in the top, I'm going to move up so you can see this clearer. It has to be through the top, and it has to take out through the bottom. So if you have a stack of moss blocks, it will automatically fill up at hopper speed. And then once it turns into bone meal, it will extract the bone meal out of it from the bottom. Very cool. So you can make some pretty cool automatic composting stations with that. But yeah, that's about it. The cauldron, again, similar to the composter, except you don't compost anything. You actually put water in it. So either water bottle, water bucket, either one works. A water bottle will fill it a third of the way. So you have to click 3 times until it's full. However, if I use a water bucket, it will fill it the whole way, all at once. And taking it out with a bucket obviously extracts it all at once. Again, you can also read this with a comparator. However, you can't use a dispenser, or you can't, as you saw before, you could use a dispenser to place water, but you can't use a dispenser to place water in a cauldron, or to place lava in a cauldron, or to take it out either. That's pretty interesting, but you know, it is how it is. And the comparator there reads how full the cauldron is. And oh my goodness, that's all the storage containers. And now moving on, we have rails and entities and minecarts, rails and boats, basically. Okay, so most of you probably know what the rails do, but I'm going to explain them anyway. A normal rail is just a normal rail, so you can place them, they can turn and do all sorts of funky things. And if you grab a minecart, you can actually place the minecart on the rail and push it along. It will not keep going, it will eventually slow down and stop, but yeah, that's what a rail does. It is the only type of rail that can turn. All the other rails cannot, so if you want to turn your minecarts, you have to use the normal rail. Next up, we have the powered rail. Now this one is pretty interesting. You can put a minecart in and push it along like normal, except you can see it will stop almost immediately because it is slowing the minecart down. This can be used to stop a minecart at certain places, or on the contrary, if you give it power using a redstone block, for example, it will power the powered rail. While the powered rail is powered, it glows a bright red rather than the normal darker red that it normally is at. And this will actually propel the minecart. Just like that, it will propel the minecart to a certain speed. I think it's about like 8 or 9 blocks a second. Not exactly sure the exact speed, but you know, that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that it actually pushes the minecart along. Again, this, as the normal rail is the only one that can turn, you can't actually make the minecart turn with these rails. To make it turn, you gotta use the normal rails. The detector rail. This will detect a minecart going over and emit a redstone signal. So let's just build out a little track here, just like that. And we put a detector rail in the middle. We'll grab a redstone dust to show that it outputs stuff. And if we run a minecart over it, it will output it while the minecart is running over it. One use case for this, one of the most basic use cases for this is that. If you don't want the powered rail to always be powered for whatever reason, you can do this. So as soon as it runs over the detector rail, it realizes and then powers the powered rail, meaning it will power the minecart to keep going. And you can put this every once in a while and it will keep propelling the minecart along. It does also power the block it is placed on top of, so if you have a minecart there, it is powering and it powers the block it's on top of. Finally, we have the activator rail. Now this one's an interesting one. While it is deactivated, it does the same thing as a normal rail. It doesn't really do anything, it's just a normal rail. However, once you power it, when you place a minecart on top of it, it does this weird shaky thing. So let me just quickly extend this rail a little bit so I can demonstrate better. If I get in this minecart and push myself over the powered rail just like this, it's a bit slow, but once I get over, it kicks me out of the minecart, and that applies to every mob. If there's a pig in the minecart, it'll kick it out. If there's a zombie in the minecart, it'll kick it out. So yeah. Next, we have the different types of minecarts. Now, the normal minecart is what you saw before. Mobs can get in it. I can get in it, and I can move it slightly by using my W key and facing in the direction I want to move in. You can get a mob in it as long as the minecart is moving and it collides with a mob. So while the minecart is moving, if it collides, for example, with a pig, the pig will get in the minecart. Just like that. The minecart has to be moving though. I'm gonna quickly exterminate this pig. There we go. But yeah, the minecart has to be moving and colliding with a mob. Not all mobs can get in minecarts though. Just make sure you note that. Only most mobs can, but some mobs can't. Next we have the hopper minecart. Now this one is a hopper in a minecart, so any storage container placed directly above it. For example, if we grab a barrel, if we place a barrel directly above it, it will suck items out of it. And the interesting thing is, it sucks it out extremely fast. I believe it's one item every single game tick. Pretty cool. However, the only difference between this and a normal hopper is that it doesn't put items into the container below it. So if I push it over this rail, if I push it over this barrel, you can see it is not taking its items out. To do that, you have to have a hopper underneath it. So if I grab a hopper and pull items out, push it over the hopper, and the hopper pulls the items back out of the hopper minecart. You can also lock them if they are on an activator rail. If the activator rail is deactivated, it is unlocked, which means if there's something above it, for example, it will pull items out. However, if the activator is on, it will lock the hopper minecart, meaning it cannot pull items out of the barrel above it. Moving on, we have the chest minecart. This one's probably the most basic one. It's a chest in a minecart. If you shift click, you can use it as a chest. Nothing more to it. You can pull items out with the hopper, but that's about it. The furnace minecart. This one's a fun one. So this is a pretty useful one if you don't have gold to make powered rails, because unlike normal minecart, unlike what you think, it's not a furnace in a minecart. You can't smelt things in this minecart. But what you can do is use fuel, right click it on the minecart, and it will go in the direction that you're facing. And so off it goes. Different types of fuel will push it different distances, so the better the fuel, the longer it will go for. And yeah, it always moves at that constant speed. Not quite as fast as the powered rail, but if you don't have powered rails, or just find it easier to make normal rails, furnace minecart is a pretty good option. TNT minecart. Now I have to be careful around this one, because if it flows over, if it goes over, we'll move it away a little bit so that it doesn't cause a massive explosion. As you can probably guess what's about to happen. But if it runs over an activated activator rail, just like that, it will explode. Just like a normal TNT. The other way you can get it to blow up is to make it collide with something. For example, if it is more than 3 blocks up and you drop it off a ledge, If it falls for more than 3 blocks, it will blow up instantly. The further up you drop it from, the bigger the explosion. Next up, we have chest boats. Now, there are 2 different types of chest boats. The normal one with all types of wood except for the 2 nether woods and bamboo. They make this normal chest boat, which you sit inside. There's not much of a difference between the normal one and the raft, that I'll explain in a bit. But basically, if you sit inside, you can open up a chest. You can move it around. You can shift click to open up the chest without getting in the boat. Very useful. However, the bamboo raft, the other version of the chest boat, it's exactly the same. The only difference is you sit slightly higher up on the bamboo raft. That's literally the only difference. And the chest is also slightly higher up, I guess, on the texture. Okay, doors, gates, and trapdoors all work the same. They open when they're powered, they close when they're not. Iron doors and iron trapdoors, they will not open with your hand. You have to use redstone to power them. Unlike the normal doors, which you can open with your hand or power them with redstone. Same with gates, except there's no iron gates, so, gates, they just open normally. And then also trapdoors. They work the same as the doors, except are trapdoors. Okay, finally we have the miscellaneous section. This is ones that I couldn't really find the category to put them in, but they're here as well. Copper bulbs, they toggle, so powering them once, unlike a redstone lamp that stays on as long as you power it and stays off as long as you unpower. It toggles, so powering it once turns it on, powering it again turns it off, and so on. An observer will detect not only when the copper bulb is powered, also when it is unpowered, so it will actually trigger twice every time you power it. Now, all the copper bulbs work the same, except they give off different light levels. And then you can also read it with a comparator. So if it is on, it will give a comparator output, just like that. If it is off, it will not. Next up, TNT. Now, again, I'm going to bring this away a little bit to demonstrate, but this one's pretty obvious. I'm pretty sure all of you know how this one works. So basically, TNTs, they can be activated a number of ways, but once they are activated, they explode. You can activate them through directly powering them with redstone blocks, flint and steels, fire charges, buttons, redstone dust, or pressure plates. So yeah, they all explode after about 5 seconds of a little sizzle, and they make a big hole. Yeah. And finally, the TNT can actually be dispensed out of a dispenser, and it will be dispensed in the lit state. So it would have lit the TNT and blow it up. So if I go ahead and put a dispenser down, we'll move it a bit further away again. Put a TNT in it, power it. It will drop an active TNT, just like that. I've already explained this one, but a redstone lamp turns on while it's powered, turns off while it's not. Very basic. The bell you can ring, make a loud noise. You can place it on the floor like I did there. You can place it on the side of a block. You can also place it underneath a block. They all work the same way. However, a bell can also be powered by redstone. So if you power it with redstone, it will sound the bell. A drip leaf, you stand on it. It falls down slowly after some time and then pops back up eventually after some time. The reason it's a redstone component is because if you power it, it doesn't fall down. That's about it. Armor stand, definitely. I'm not quite sure why this is under the redstone category, but it is. You can put armor on it. Armor. Let's just go ahead and get an assortment of different armor types just to demonstrate. But yes, you can put any sort of armor on it. In Bedrock, you can also give it arms and give it a sword, or it has arms in Bedrock. You can also give it a sword, but I actually have a mod here on Java Edition to give it arms. So I'm going to show arms. This is what it would look like in Bedrock, but obviously in Java you can't do this. So this is a Bedrock only thing. And you can actually give it a sword and stuff. Let's just give it a diamond sword. Just like that. In Bedrock as well, you can power it to give it a different pose, and it will toggle between a bunch of different poses. In Java Edition, again, you can't do that. Not sure why, but this mod again gives me the ability to pose it. So in Bedrock, it would probably look something along the lines of that. But that it will change every time you power it. So if you power it, it changes a pose. Bam. And if you power it again, it changes the pose again, just like bam, just like that. These probably aren't the poses in Bedrock, but you get the idea. And that is every single redstone component explained. But yeah, that is everything. Oh, I don't know how long this video is going to turn out. Hopefully not too long, and hopefully you stuck around to the end, and because if you did, you're the best. Yeah, subscribe if you enjoyed. I'm sure you got, if you are still here, I'm sure you got something out of it. Maybe even some experienced redstoners may not know some of the things I have mentioned in this video. I'm sure you've all at least got something out of this video. Hopefully it helped you. Anyway, as I said, this is a series, barely functional, and next episode starting from next episode, I'll be going over certain circuits that are commonly used in redstone contraptions, and hopefully those videos will be shorter, hopefully about 8 to 10 minutes, because this is a bit of a long one. But it was necessary because it's important to know how each component works. But also, hopefully, by the end of this series, you will be able to make your own redstone contraptions and understand how they work. That's the most exciting part. Anyway, if you're excited for that, subscribe for more of this series. Comment down below what circuits you want to know and what redstone contraptions you want to make. And hopefully I can explain at least some parts of those redstone contraptions in the coming episodes. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. As I said, subscribe if you did, and I'll see you in the next one.